Hello, I'm Michel Saint-Cyr. This is number 0858, numéro 0858, the Stuff File program, with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0858. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Tim Richter, who is the president and CEO of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness.
Homelessness is a problem that was created by policy, and we're going to have any hope at all of solving it. We need to address kind of the structural or policy roots of it, and I also got a sense that there is a real thirst at a community level to do something different. And so Canadian Alliance got started because there was nobody in Canada, no national voice that was moving forward and addressing the issue. And I think most importantly, I learned in politics a long time ago that governments will do what they can get away with.
David Shoffner is the PR manager at Pavone Advertising, the people behind SpotBowl.com, where you can rate the Super Bowl commercials. Does he like to be surprised by the commercials, or does he want to see them ahead of time?
Personally, I like to be surprised. Professionally, I like to know about them ahead of time. My role here at Spot Bowl, I'm immersed in all kinds of intel about the spots, looking over teasers, looking at the pre-releases, reporting on them, talking about them in interviews like this one. So I'm very, very well versed in most of what's going to happen on Super Bowl Sunday. Very, very few surprises for me. Now, personally, I would have loved to sit down and watch a Super Bowl and be surprised by every single commercial. Nothing going into the game about the ads, but unfortunately, I can't do that.
Stuart Nulman is in with another edition of Book Banter.
Hi, I'm Stuart Nulman, and Book Banter commemorates International Holocaust Remembrance Day with a selection of titles so we can continue to never forget. Stay tuned later on the Stuff File program.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news, dad joke theater, Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, morning shower thoughts, and of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0858, was Michel Saint-Cyr, who is the president of the television production house Group Fairplay. And I have to take a moment to say that I have worked with Michel for more than 20 years in various capacities on various television shows, including one that I hosted for 8 years, that was Soul Call. Michel is one of the best people I have ever collaborated with. Thank you very much, Michel, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. A 22-year-old British Columbia resident was pulled over for excessive speeding in a heavily modified Acura that police described as held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. BC Highway Patrol stopped the driver after clocking the vehicle at 130 kilometers per hour in a 30 kilometer per hour zone. The early model car featured makeshift repairs, including rebar and duct tape replacing the rear window, plus a welded gate latch securing the driver's side door. Corporal Michael McLaughlin said it looked like it had been chewed up by Robosaurus, and added, "It's amazing that this particular car could go that fast without disintegrating." Police ordered the unsafe vehicle off the road pending extensive repairs. "Oh, I've seen the pictures of this car. This car doesn't need repairs. It needs to be cubed." Anyway, the driver received an excessive speeding ticket, faces 3 years of higher insurance premiums. What, he actually had insurance on this car? Wow. and must pay towing and 7-day impoundment fees.
Because if you want to keep up with Mother Nature, you need every advantage you can get. Acura, be one with the wind.
Again, I've seen the pictures. Not this Acura. This Acura is far from accurate. Yeah. Austrian scientists have recorded the first documented case of a tool being used by a cow. The cow's name is Veronica, a Swiss brown cow owned by Carinthia resident Wittgar Wiegel, who uses sticks and brushes to scratch herself with remarkable precision. The cow began picking up wood pieces a decade ago and now prefers a long brush, using the brush end on thick skin areas and the handle for sensitive spots. Two University of Veterinary Medicine Vienna researchers studied Veronica's behavior in person, said one, "We show that the cow can engage in genuinely flexible tool use," said the other. The findings highlight how assumptions about livestock intelligence may reflect gaps in observation rather than genuine cognitive limits. The discovery could reshape understanding of farm animal intelligence. Well, I've known since I was a little kid that farm animals were intelligent, but that's because I read Charlotte's Web in grade 3. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, regular listeners to the program already know how I feel about cats. They're evil, little pieces of evil plotting against mankind. Well, here is the latest tale. A house cat caused a kitchen fire in Dallas County after jumping onto a stovetop and accidentally activating the appliance. Oh, was it really an accident? The Garland Fire Department responded to the blaze and later reviewed home surveillance footage showing the incident. Video reveals the cat hitting the stove knob and turning on the burner before jumping down and fleeing. Said James Duggar with the Garland Fire Department, 10 or 15 seconds after the cat gets up there, all of a sudden the fire starts. The cat jumps down and runs off. Combustible items on the stove quickly ignited, spreading flames to other appliances, the kitchen door, and ceiling. The fire caused significant kitchen damage, but did not affect other areas of the home. Officials recommend keeping flammable material away from stovetops and using safety knob covers to prevent accidental activation. Really? How about getting rid of the cat? Oh, I know what some of you listeners are saying, especially you cat owners. You're thinking that I'm evil and that cats are just little cuddly furballs giving you copious amounts of companionship. But you know what a cat would say to that.
Putting a happy face on things, I see. What an interesting philosophy. At what point did you forget that we're trying to take over the world?
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program, shall we? The Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, or CAE, leads a national movement of individuals, organizations, and communities working together to end homelessness in Canada. Tim Richter is the president and CEO of the CAEH, and he joins us from Cochrane, Alberta, via riverside.com. Hi, Tim.
Hey, great to be here.
Great to have you on the program. We should mention the fact that I play a commercial, a PSA, done by the Pro Bono Group, and that's why I wanted to get in contact with you. As a matter of fact, it will be playing later on in the show. But I just wanted to know, from a ground roots point of view, first of all, how did the CAEH come together in the first place, and when did it come together?
Well, the Alliance was founded in 2012, and, it was set up because we, in Canada, we had a problem with homelessness kind of getting worse despite our best efforts, and there were places like in Alberta where progress was being made, and, the rest of the country was itching to find out what Alberta was up to. And so I founded the Alliance in about 2012, and we've been working with communities and governments since then.
just generally across the country, how do we do as far as regions of the country is concerned when it comes to homelessness? Which is better and which still has a problem or a bigger issue to overcome?
Well, I wish I could tell you things were getting better and there were some regions that were bright spots. There's some communities that are doing really great things, but Canada's been struggling with a housing and affordability crisis that has seen homelessness surge. So from about 2019 to 2024, unsheltered homelessness, so the number of people sleeping outside, has gone up about 300%. And, in about the same period, overall homelessness has just about doubled in Canada. And that's really been driven by, soaring rent costs, reduced vacancy, a housing crisis that's been going on forever, as well as a cost of living crisis. Like a lot of your listeners might, really appreciate how much more expensive things are getting in the grocery store these days. And, hundreds of thousands of Canadians have been just forced out of the rental system and into homelessness. And it's really a tragedy. We've seen some progress, like Alberta until 2019, had been the only province in the country to ever reduce homelessness. Edmonton had cut homelessness in half. But that a lot of that gain has been erased by some recent challenges. So we see some cities doing really good work. Fort McMurray, Alberta, has eliminated homelessness for veterans. St. Thomas, Ontario, has had significant reductions in homelessness, has ended homelessness for veterans, but also reduced homelessness by over 30%. So there's some really good things happening in small pockets.
You mentioned Alberta. So what is the secret sauce that you had that made your numbers better than the rest of the country, for instance?
Well, I think it really came down to a community level desire to fix the problem. So, instead of trying to deal with crisis after crisis, they said, look, this is a problem we can solve. So they focused on ending it. I think there were some strong local leaders. They used, real-time data, built coordinated systems, and then just focused on, continuous improvement. And the other big thing in Alberta is that it had the support at the time of the province of Alberta. That, has fallen apart a bit lately, but that was a big ingredient.
When it comes to this particular country, how do we do as far as fighting homelessness is concerned, as opposed to other countries like the United States or countries in Europe? And do you take ideas from other countries to apply to Canada?
Well, I left the private sector to get into this work in homelessness, and I often joke that I haven't had an original thought since I left the private sector, and a lot of the stuff we're doing are ideas we've pulled from all over the world. But compared to a lot of other places, I think Canada is an outlier, in the OECD or among Western nations. And I think we have rates of homelessness in Canada that are quite a bit higher than you would see in a lot of Western countries. In fact, I think we may even have, on a per capita basis, higher rates of homelessness than the United States.
Why do you think that is?
Uh, I it's driven by a couple of things. The first thing is we have a raging housing crisis in Canada. Like homelessness is a housing problem. There's a great book out of the States with that title, and I encourage your listeners to look it up. But since in the early 1980s, the government of Canada stopped in supporting the construction of rental housing. Then they cut affordable housing programs altogether in the mid 90s. And you saw with that just an explosion in the rates of homelessness. And so fixing it is really, we got to get the housing crisis sorted.
Is part of the problem the fact that, I mean, we live in big cities, at least I'm in a big city, major metropolitan center. Is homelessness a problem or a bigger problem in bigger cities as opposed to smaller communities? Because smaller communities tend to, for lack of a better term, look out for one another. And the hustle and bustle of a big city, we tend to ignore some of the things that are falling between the cracks.
Well, I think there's homelessness in rural communities just as there are in urban centers. I think we haven't And a lot of times we haven't really measured it, but it has been there. But now, especially in Canada, we're seeing homelessness in plain sight in communities where people didn't see it before. I think that, in part because people in rural communities that would lose their housing would go to the cities. I think in part because housing remained more affordable in rural communities and the cost of living may not have been so acute, but we certainly do are seeing it now in a way that certainly in Canada that we've never seen it.
I mentioned in the introduction that your movement involves individuals, organizations, and communities. That's a great combination, but at the same time, there's always the old saying, too many cooks in the kitchen. Uh, is it difficult to um, get a consensus with all the individuals that you have to deal with, especially right across the country?
Yeah, I would. I think so, but again, I think we have to remember a couple of things. One is that, homelessness ends one person at a time, and homelessness ends one community at a time, and every community is going to be a little different in what they have and what they need. And so we work on kind of a community by community basis and teach them a bit of a system for ending homelessness and show them and provide training to frontline workers on some of the key skills they need to have in order to get there. And then we work with communities on things at a federal level, what they have in common, like, for example, addressing the housing crisis.
What for you was the push that came to the shove? Why did you create the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness? Was there something in particular that you had seen or experienced that you decided, I need to do this?
I think it was first recognizing that homelessness is a solvable problem. Homelessness is a problem that was created by policy. And, if we're going to have any hope at all of solving it, we need to address kind of the structural or policy roots of it. And I also got a sense that, there is a real thirst at a community level to do something different. And so I started, the Canadian Alliance got started because there was nobody in Canada, no national voice that was moving forward and addressing the issue. And I think most importantly, I learned in politics a long time ago that governments will do what they can get away with, and people experiencing homelessness and people living in poverty had no voice in the system, and so we wanted to build that voice for those folks.
The website for the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness is caeh.ca. What can people find when they go there? How can they be of help to your organization? And what kinds of things do they learn by going to the website?
Well, if you come to our website, you're going to learn a lot about what's needed in ending homelessness, and you can learn how you can connect and be involved. And I often, when folks ask me, what can I do to help, I said there's really three things: give, volunteer, and tell a friend. So give, you can support the Alliance. We're a registered charity, or you can connect with local organizations in your community, and we can help you do that. Uh, Volunteer, again, really, we can help you connect with organizations in your communities that are interested in helping out. But we also would love to have volunteers, especially when it comes to our political campaigns that we're engaged with. And tell a friend. Ultimately, homelessness ends when we change the policy that created it, and communities have systems for ending homelessness. And so, if you can be engaged, uh, talk to your elected officials, tell them that you want this fixed, you can be a huge help.
It's a long road to travel, but are you very optimistic in knowing that we will get to the end of the road as far as homelessness is concerned?
Yeah, it's you have to keep hope in this business, but I'm confident we'll get there because I've seen it happen. We've seen how Canada can alleviate homelessness at scale. We've seen how communities around the country can alleviate homelessness at scale. And I've met thousands of people over the years who have, moved out of homelessness. And so I know it's possible. The key is, building that movement, getting people together and demanding that change.
Tim, it's a very important issue, and congratulations on spearheading this endeavor, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. And I thank you very, very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you very much to our friends at the Pro Bono Group. They have been a lot of fun to work with and are producing some really great ads. So thank you to them and thank you to you.
Tim Richter, the President and CEO of the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0858, and you'll find the link to the CAEH's site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
And now, Dad Joke Theater.
I just burned 2,000 calories. Let that be the last time I leave brownies in the oven while I nap.
Join us again for another Stuff File program, Dad Joke Theater.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like. But the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram.
It's garbage day. You're out enjoying your daily walk when you come upon two children rummaging through a recycling bin. One of them catches your eye. You look away. Are you empathetic or apathetic? Don't let homelessness assumptions get in the way of homelessness solutions. Go to CanadaCanDoIt.ca. Help the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness.
You're listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, coming to you from Montreal, Canada, where we share the longest unprotected border in the world with the United States. Take that as a sign of extreme friendship or a warning.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk about commercials in the Super Bowl and how you can rate them. Plus, Stuart Nulman is in with another edition of Book Banter. We also have a Sir Dudley's Poetry Corner, Morning Shower Thought, and of course, an Idiot of the Day. But we have much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. Sweden's music industry has removed the country's biggest song for 2024 from official national rankings after determining it was primarily created by artificial intelligence. The song, known in English as I Know You're Not Mine by Jakub, has exceeded 5 million Spotify streams and tops the platform's Swedish Top 50 playlist. Investigative journalist Emanuel Carlston discovered Jakub had no real-world presence and traced the song's registration to executives at Denmark's Stellar Music, including staff in its AI division. Team Jakub, the creators behind the project, told Carlston they don't just press a button, and described AI as a tool in human-led creative work. However, IFPI Sweden's chief stated that songs that are mainly AI-generated cannot qualify for national chart rankings. Really? I think we all owe Milli Vanilli an apology. Yeah. Austin Simmons remains jailed on $5,000 bond after police charged him with felony battery for allegedly throwing a ketchup packet at another man in a Florida bus terminal on the evening of January 19th. The victim, Carlos Mora, had been checking on Simmons, who appeared unconscious when Simmons woke up irate and threw an open ketchup pack at the victim. Mora sustained 2 spots of ketchup on his jacket from the .3-ounce packet, which officers found on the ground opened with ketchup pouring out. While Simmons denied striking Mora, he reportedly attempted giving the victim a ketchup packet. The incident escalated to a third-degree felony charge due to Simmons' prior 2019 battery conviction, carrying a maximum 5-year prison sentence. Police also charged him with drug possession after finding a chalky substance identified as cocaine. Wow. A possible 5 years in prison for throwing a simple ketchup packet. It better have been Heinz.
I'm sorry, but I can't be seen eating non-Heinz ketchup.
Of course.
Also in Florida, Fort Walton Beach police arrested Fang Wong for battery on a suspected official after she defecated toward police officers during an attempted detention. The incident occurred at Palms of Emerald Coast Massage Parlor when a Department of Health employee was conducting a routine inspection. According to police, Wong became upset and yelled at the inspector before trying to force them from the business. When officers attempted to detain Wong, she defecated toward them to avoid arrest. Police said this was a follow-up investigation connected to previous search warrants at the same location when it operated under various other names, including Blue Bay Massage and Spa, New Magnolia Spa, and Classy Spa. Oh, please, tell me that the last name Classy Spa was one of the owner's attempt at irony. And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here on this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, back in my youth in Sunday school around the holidays, I was tapped for many years to play a shepherd in the Christmas pageant. Basically, I would recite the full scripture from memory, part of which Linus was quoted saying in A Charlie Brown Christmas. So I know a thing or two about the pageantry of the holidays. However, this one baffles me. The Rottenburg-Stuttgart Diocese of the Roman Catholic Church said they deeply regret this and emphasized that at no time was it their intention to provoke or disparage central tenets of faith. What was their regret? Well, the regret was regarding a nativity scene during a live broadcast of a Christmas Eve Mass at St. Mary's in Stuttgart, Germany. During the service, Thomas Steiger, the officiating priest, said, "The nativity scene shows a real human being, lying there miserable, naked and exposed. In the manger was a real adult woman in a fetal position covered in rice paper, simulating the vernix that covers a newborn infant." Dubbed Slime Jesus by critics, the scene sparked controversy. Said the diocese, "It has become clear that the chosen form of presentation caused bewilderment, incomprehension, and anger among many people, especially on an important holiday such as Christmas." Well, that statement seems a little bit wordy. Surely there could be something from the Bible that is more succinct.
"Forgive them. They know not what they do."
Oh, different holiday. That's from Easter. My bad. And now, this.
The Stuff File presents Sir Dudley Piddly Havisham Sedgwick Smythe's Poetry Corner.
There once was a runner named Dwight, who could speed even faster than light. He set out one day in a relative way, and returned on the previous night.
And let's get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Each and every year when the Super Bowl rolls around, there is excitement not only for the game, but also for the long-heralded premieres of the Super Bowl commercials. There is a website where you can vote on your favorite or least favorite ads. It's called spotbowl.com. David Shoffner, who is the public relations manager with Pavone Advertising, joins us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania via riverside.com. Hi, David.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the program with us. Now, we spoke, I guess it was 18 years ago, back in 2008, talking about Spot Bowl. So what I want to know is, how has this changed over the years, and how did it begin in the first place for those who are just listening to us now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, this is the 23rd year that we've done Spot Bowl. The first year was 2004, and I've been proud to say I've been around for all 23 of them. And yeah, when we first created Spot Bowl, we're an ad agency here in Pennsylvania, like you mentioned, called Pavone Group. We first created this website. It was kind of designed to allow us as an agency to be on this stage, right? The Super Bowl is the biggest stage, biggest day of the year for advertising. We didn't have a client who was advertising in the game, so we created Spot Bowl, which is a commercial polling website. It lets people vote for their favorite Super Bowl commercials. At the time, there were very few, if any, resources like it. So we were one of the first. It was successful from the first year, so we did it again and again. You're right. What we've tried to do over the years is evolve it. Right? We wanted to kind of change and evolve and become something more each year. So one of the key features that we've added in recent years is something called predictive analytics. At Pavone, Group, we have this team of data scientists, and they work with AI and data for our clients, and we put them to work for Spot Bowl. And they created this tool that uses all of the intel from past years, all of the voting intel, and all of these different factors about the commercials. And this tool, this predictive analytics tool, predicts how each spot will rank in our poll. And then, of course, we still have America voting, and it's really a fascinating process. This predictive analytics tool has correctly predicted the top 5 rankings in each of the past several years. It's fascinating.
Wow. Now, one of the things that's also interesting is there is now social media even more than it was back in 2008. For instance, you had to kind of wait for the Super Bowl to see the Super Bowl commercials. But now they're leaked everywhere and certainly on YouTube. How has that changed your contest?
It has, and I would say this: the pre-released spots, the leaked spots, this trend, which I'd say has been going on for the past 5 or 10 years. We've seen the pre-released spots ahead of the game. It's actually made our job a little easier. Now, you're right about the element of surprise isn't there. So if they're releasing these spots ahead of time, and I often compare the pre-release spots to seeing your Christmas gifts before Christmas, right? I mean, for some people that's a good thing. They like to know. Some people like to be surprised. But I think what it comes down to for brands, why do brands do this? Well, the cost of these ads is so high. So what brands are trying to do is they realize that the game that's happening on TV on Sunday, that's not the only game they're involved with. They're trying to extend that investment and get people talking online on social media, as you mentioned, before the game, and really kind of get more bang for their buck. And it's a smart strategy. In the past couple of years, we've seen as many as 50 to 75% of the total ads released ahead of time.
You mentioned the Christmas analogy, so I'll ask the question in this form, and that is, do you look forward to seeing the spots on the day of the game, or do you like to know a little bit about them beforehand, personally?
Personally, I like to be surprised. Professionally, I like to know about them ahead of time. And in my role here at Spot Bowl, I'm immersed in all kinds of intel about the spots, looking over teasers, looking at the pre-releases, reporting on them, talking about them in interviews like this one. So I'm very, very well versed in most of what's going to happen on Super Bowl Sunday. Very, very few surprises for me. Now, personally, I would love it. I would love to sit down and watch a Super Bowl and be surprised by every single commercial. Know nothing going into the game about the ads, but unfortunately, I can't do that.
When it comes to the anticipation and the excitement that people get from those spots, is it because of the nature of the spot itself, whether it be humorous or touching, or is it because of the anticipation of the product? And the reason why I bring that up is, in addition to all the funny and heartwarming commercials, there's also a lot of movie trailers that get premiered during the Super Bowl. So is, for instance, a premiere of a particular movie, does it get a rating because it's hyping that particular movie that people want to see?
Sure. I mean, in the early days of Spot Bowl, we actually included the movie trailers in our polls. We realized pretty early on that movie fans are a passionate bunch, and they will vote for their favorite movie trailers, and often those movie trailers would outrank the commercials themselves, the real commercials. So we stopped tracking movie trailers many years ago, but you're right. I think. I think Americans are fascinated by these Super Bowl commercials, and it's become this sort of phenomenon that it is today because it's the bar has consistently been raised over the years for the quality, what we expect, the quality that we expect from these commercials. So we see more celebrities, more laughs, more entertainment value, more tearjerker, kind of stuff, more stories being told. I mean, these are mini movies if we're going to break it down, not just in terms of budget, but in terms of what they do to engage audiences. We expect to be entertained by these commercials in ways that we don't expect any other day of the year.
The Spot Bowl and spotbowl.com is the granddaddy of it all. But as you said earlier, there are others that are out there like that. That being said, with everybody rating these commercials, does it actually put more pressure on advertising firms? Because, I mean, you are from an advertising firm. Does it put pressure to bring out a Super Bowl ad that can be head and shoulders above the others?
I think so, and I think, at the end of the day, the ads have to sell product, right? They have to boost awareness of the brand that they're advertising. They have to sell product. That's the number one goal. From a pride and ego standpoint, absolutely. I think these ad agencies, nobody wants to release an ad that ranks poorly in polls like ours. USA Today has a poll that's been around since the '80s, very well publicized and notable poll from USA Today. It's called the Ad Meter. You don't want to be, toward the bottom of those polls because the brands are watching. Your client is watching those polls, and the agencies we know are too.
It's like a movie being at the low end of Rotten Tomatoes, correct?
Absolutely, you're right, and that's a good analogy. We've seen movies that are rated poorly, that get poor ratings from critics, but end up doing well at the box office. So it's kind of a trade off. Now that doesn't happen often. Usually, if a movie is poorly rated, it also doesn't do well at the box office. So an ad that might poll near the bottom of our poll. Probably is lacking a few elements that would make it successful from a marketing standpoint as well.
In your people poll that you do each and every year, are you ever surprised by what ranks higher than some, or are you surprised in the other direction where you thought a particular spot was great and it ranked lower in public opinion?
Sometimes. No, there's not as many surprises. I will say after 22, 23 years of doing this, there's not as many surprises for me. I'm able to kind of recognize at first glance whether a spot is going to rank well in our poll or not well. But you're right. Occasionally there are some spots that usually it works the other way around. The second example that you mentioned, usually I'm fond of a spot and it doesn't do well in our poll. And that's what surprises me. Very, not as often do I see a spot ranking highly that shouldn't be there. America's, I'd say, a pretty good judge of what a quality spot is, and they usually get it right 99% of the time. But sometimes I'll see a spot near the bottom of our poll that is a little bit of a puzzler for me.
Now, I have an audience in the United States as well with several radio stations, but I'm also in Canada. So can people in Canada vote in spotbowl.com?
Absolutely, yeah. The site is live right now as we speak. We do a lot of work. We have a lineup on there. We do a lot of intel searching every single day, talking to brands, talking to industry experts about who's going to be in the game. So we have a lineup page on Spot Bowl where you can get a sneak peek of who's going to be in the game and maybe what their ad is about. And then one of the newer features to Spot Bowl, we talked earlier about pre-released ads. So about a week before the game, we're going to open pre-game voting. So you could actually vote on the pre-released ads, however many there may be at that time. And as new ads are released, we put them up on the site for voting. So voting on Spot Bowl actually happens, it starts about a week before the game.
And how do people vote? Is it a 1 through 10, 1 through 5? How does that, what's the tabulation, basically?
Well, we've experimented with different methods over the years in the interest of evolving Spot Bowl, but what we found is to be the most effective, this has been the method for some years now, is a simple thumbs up, thumbs down. Right? It's the classic social media, YouTube kind of voting mechanism. You like it or you don't like it. We want to make it as simple as possible.
And last question: in all the years you've been doing this, do you have a favorite spot?
Oh boy. That's tough. No, but the one that I keep going back to for me, Budweiser. Budweiser's in the game every year. They're one of the biggest advertisers. They've got a product that lends itself well to the Super Bowl audience. It's a product that many people are probably enjoying at the time. So it's a product that they can be funny with a Bud Light spot. Bud Light's good at being funny. It's a product that they can be patriotic with or sentimental with. The Clydesdales are good at that. So they've got a lot of different angles that they can take. And one of my favorites from Budweiser was back in, I want to say it was 2000, might have been 2008 when we first talked. They had it featured some troops, some soldiers getting off of an airplane in an airport terminal, and slowly, one by one, everyone in the terminal stood in a round of applause for these troops. Such a poignant, such an emotional spot. It really gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. And at the end, it was just an Anheuser-Busch logo. People didn't have beers. It wasn't a lot of heavy sells of product. It was just really tapping into the emotion of America at the time, and such a powerful ad. That one stood out to me, and it was a winner in our poll that year.
Well, congratulations on the amazing success of what Spot Bowl has become. I mean, like I said, we talked only in your fourth year back in 2008, and here you are now in 2026 and still going strong, if not stronger than before. So congratulations with all that you've done through spotbowl.com over the years. And thank you very much for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Well, hey, thanks for having me.
David Shoffner, the public relations manager with Pavone Advertising, the creators of spotbowl.com. You can go to our website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0858, and you'll find the link to their site. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Giving you something to think about. This is Morning Shower Thoughts.
Here's a $1 billion idea. How about a smoke detector that shuts off when I yell, "I'm just cooking"?
Morning Shower Thoughts from the Stuff File program.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/the Stuff File program.
From our studios in Montreal, Canada, and going out to the rest of the world, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. It's time to crack a spine. The Stuff File presents Book Banter with Stuart Nulman. Once again, here's Peter Anthony Holder.
And January 27th is the day that commemorates International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And we have a special edition of Book Banter for that very topic. Hi, Stu.
Hi, Peter. Yes, this is a very special edition of Book Banter because we're remembering the Holocaust and we should never forget about this tragedy. Books are a great way of informing oneself about the Holocaust and how to educate ourselves about this terrible event in human history. Usually when you think of books about the Holocaust, three quickly come to mind, and that's The Diary of Anne Frank, Mouse by Art Spiegelman, and Schindler's List by Thomas Keneally. I want to offer three books that are not usually associated with the Holocaust, and you should make it part of your to-read list if you want to read more about this subject. Let me start off first with a novel called The Wall by John Hersey. If you remember John Hersey, he was the journalist who wrote about Hiroshima in a very landmark book that was published in 1947, first in the New Yorker, which was called Hiroshima. But The Wall was published in 1950, and it's an epic novel about life in the Warsaw Ghetto before and during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The novel itself is based on detailed diaries of an individual named Noach Levinson, who chronicled the life of the Jews in Warsaw for a period of 8 years from 1935 until the uprising began in 1943. There's an introduction in the book before the narrative starts that those diaries, that archive, Levinson buried it in the ghetto before it got liquidated. And then after the war in 1946-47 was dug up and translated from its original Polish language version. And that really gives a very interesting portrait of this thriving Jewish community and what they went through, how they thrived before Nazi occupation and during Nazi occupation. Actually, a TV miniseries was made of it in 1979. But it's a book that's sort of like lost in time, but I think it's something that should be rediscovered. So I recommend that one.
Well, why do you think that it was lost in time?
First of all, I think it's a thick book. It's a very thorough book. But also after the miniseries appeared in 1979, and the book tie-in edition was done, it just disappeared. No reissues. It was always the big three, so to speak. Schindler, Mouse, and Frank. But if you could find a copy of the book, I found my copy in a secondhand bookstore, the original 1953 paperback edition. Please do yourself a favor and read. And don't forget, Hersey was a well-known journalist. So it's not just, it's well researched. So this is, lack of a better term, a buried treasure.
And the name of the book again is?
Called The Wall by John Hersey, and it was originally published by Knopf in 1950.
And what is the second book that you have for us?
Well, this one also a novel, but it deals with the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in particular, not the life of the Jewish community in Warsaw before the war. It's called Mila 18 by Leon Uris. It was published in 1961. And next to Exodus, this book is one of Uris's best-known novels. It portrays the bravery and courage of the resistance fighters who were ghetto residents, and they're fighting for their survival against the Nazis during the uprising, which happened for 2 weeks in the spring of 1943. It really, gives you that point of view of what it was like, how this struggle was, and how clandestine it was, and how courageous it was. I actually got to see, when I was in Poland in 2017 for the March of the Living, we were in Warsaw, and we went to what was once where the ghetto stood, and we were at the actual site where Mila 18 was the address where the resistance fighters met and plotted the uprising was. It is just a mound of earth covered with grass. There's a marker that says that, this was the site of Mila 18 where which was, like I said, the home of the uprising resistance fighters. And the book itself was one of the top-selling fiction books of that year, 1961. And it's still available. You could still buy this book. It has always been reissued. And I think, like I said, because this book got overshadowed by Exodus and QB7, it's another must-read. It's another hidden treasure.
And this particular Leon Uris title is?
It's called Mila 18.
And what's the last book that you have for us in the International Holocaust Remembrance Day?
Okay, well, this is a series that's now celebrating its 20th anniversary. It's called the Azrieli Holocaust Survivors Memoir Series. It started by David Azrieli, who was a Holocaust survivor himself, and he made his fortune in real estate development, not only in Israel, but in the United States and Canada and around the world. And he started this program for Holocaust survivors who wrote down their stories. But the only condition is that they had to go to Canada after the war to spend their remaining years in Canada. And it's a wonderful program. Over 50 titles have been published in both English and French. It's distributed free to schools, community organizations, institutions, what have you. They do free events, free launches, and if you want to buy copies, you can. It's through their website, and also it's distributed by Coach House Press, a Canadian publisher, and a very reasonably priced. Every book costs just $14.95. The Azrieli Foundation just recently released 4 new titles. One of the titles I'm going to talk about is called Mother to My Mother by a lady named Malka Pishan. I always have problems. It's called it's Pishantiskaya, and she lived in the Ukrainian village of Romanov, which was a thriving Jewish community, which changed drastically with the Nazi invasion, the Soviet Union in 1941. Now, Malka and her mother begin a long struggle for their own survival, and which for 4 years they go from home to home, village to village, sleeping in barns and haylofts if they were not allowed into someone's home to evade capture by the Nazis. Now, Malka was a very resourceful person, so every day she would go around to the villages that they were staying at and beg for food and bread to feed her mom, who was fallen ill, and for herself, and even the people who risked their lives to hide them. It's a riveting story of peril and courage in the face of that peril. And what I liked about this book, it's complemented by color reproductions of her paintings that portray the stages of that struggle for survival in Ukraine. And she learned how to paint by taking art courses after she arrived in Vancouver 50 years ago with her 2 daughters. And it really complements the book beautifully. So I do recommend this book, and there's 3 other titles in the series that I will have, if you could just put it into the your newsletter, Peter, so they could, if they like this one, there's more new releases in that series.
We'll put them all up on the website as well.
Oh, yes, that would be great, please. So the book in question is A Mother to My Mother by Malka Pishantiskaya. It's published by the Azrieli Foundation and distributed by Coach House Press, and it's $14.95. And if you want to purchase this book or any other title in the series, you just go to the address memoirs.azrielifoundation.org, and we'll put that address on the website as well.
Absolutely. Excellent. And how can one get a hold of you, sir?
Well, you could easily find me in the pages of the Montreal Times, mtltimes.ca, or my blog, Stuart Nulman's Grapevine.wordpress.com, or I'm occasionally on Substack as well. So where I print some of my reviews there and some other articles of interest.
Thank you very much, Stu. And it's been said time and time again, but it bears repeating each time, never forget.
Oh, definitely, Peter. I agree 100%.
Stuart Nulman with another edition of Book Banter here on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
The Stuff File.
And we're just about a racetrack for this edition of the Stuff File program. We do have an Idiot of the Day coming your way, but I've got one more Stuff File news story to share with you right here, right now. A 48-year-old woman faces multiple charges after a Prior Lake, Minnesota police officer discovered drugs in a bag labeled "definitely not a bag full of drugs" during a traffic stop. Now, longtime listeners might think that this is a repeat story because we had a story like this before, but I assure you this is a new one. When asked if she had been drinking, the woman replied, "A lot." Her breathalyzer test showed that she was more than twice the legal limit. The officer then noticed the novelty bag, which contained a pot brownie and 14 psychedelic mushrooms, contradicting its humorous label. Police found additional drugs elsewhere during the search. The woman was charged with 4 misdemeanor counts of drug possession and 1 misdemeanor count of drunken driving. You know, whomever makes these novelty bags probably have no idea of how many morons are getting into trouble because of them. Which brings us to the moment you've all been waiting for, boys and girls. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. This Stuff File presents the Idiot of the day.
Isaac Hurley was arrested on the evening of January 13th after police found him live streaming a 24-hour challenge while hiding in a closed Walmart in Inglewood, Florida. Officers responded to a 911 call reporting a man broadcasting from inside the Walmart for a 24-hour challenge and hiding in the dog bed section. Police discovered Hurley hidden between dog beds while actively recording on his phone. After his arrest, Hurley advised that he believed he could earn money from TikTok viewers and decided to conduct a 24-hour challenge inside Walmart. He entered the store 45 minutes before its 11 p.m. closing time. Hurley faces felony burglary charges and theft for allegedly taking a $16 iPhone charger. He posted $1,500 in bond and pleaded not guilty to all charges. A judge ordered him to avoid contact with Walmart. Hurley told police he was recently kicked out of his Tennessee home and had been in Florida only 1 week. Now, why, oh why, would you be live streaming from a closed Walmart all because of a TikTok challenge? One reason, and one reason only: you're an idiot!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0858. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com. And once again, Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0858. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WNRHLP-FM in Newport Richey, Florida, KZZHLP-FM in Eureka, California, CKUW-FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
Sir Dudley here. You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. And so, as the lights dim on this show and the electrons clock out for the hour, we remind you to stay tuned, stay marvelous, and always remember, if you didn't enjoy the show, adjust your expectations, not your dial. Good day, good luck, and good grief.